Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining. I'm gonna let as people trickle in, and then I'll give a minute to start as people are being admitted. But thank you all for joining. Oh my God, hi Andy, hi Taylor, hi Vanessa.
Hi.
OMG, wow, I feel so loved today. Great to see you all. Great, I'll give it. Are there any other people in the waiting room, Zach? If not, I'm happy to get us started. Perfect, great. Well, if any more people join, we'll go ahead and just let them trickle in. But to go and get started, just for those of you who do not know me, hello, my name is Isaac. My pronouns are he, him, his. I am part of the Americas Regions Committee for the Global Mental Peer Network, and I'll be moderating today's conversation. Um, as I'm sure you all aware, today we're bringing together two very urgent and very interconnected challenges: youth mental health, and the climate crisis. Across the globe, young people are not only witnessing the impacts of climate change, and as a young person myself, I feel like it's always been a conversation in my life, especially growing up in California where it's always hot, but I'm sure there's even hotter places. But beyond just, oh, the weather being hot, climate change does severely impact multiple communities worldwide, from those facing displacement to students and youth activists being discriminated against or their voices being silenced when engaging in environmental justice activism, and overall other ways that the climate crisis is causing not just, you know, challenges around housing and other things, but more importantly, the emotional toll that these challenges are having. As we begin to recognize, the data and the policies that influence this topic, there's also a need to ensure that we're integrating lived experience and lived expertise within these conversations, especially those of young people, since oftentimes we are not provided that, sometimes that entire table or even just a seat at that table. And so that was the primary motivation behind this panel. Um, Today I'm joined by Bubhuti and by Shreyas, and in a minute I'll give them the opportunity to introduce themselves completely. But I also wanted to comment that our third panelist, Parth, is not able to attend today, unfortunately, due to really intense climate in their region, which has kind of resulted in no electricity at the moment. And so due to that challenge, they're not able to attend. So um, a very, very cruelly ironic incident, but also points to just how even in everyday life, certain impacts our climate has on just everyday life things. But yeah, to go ahead and get us started, I'll pass it over to Bubhuti and Shreyas to introduce themselves. Bubhuti, do you want to start us off? And you can just introduce yourself with your name, your pronouns if you're comfortable, and um, kind of what you do for work and why this topic matters to you.
Hello everyone. First of all, I am really thankful I get to speak on this topic because I think the intersection of mental health and climate justice is one of the topic that requires to be talked in today's world because both topics are so important to us youths, right? Hi, I'm Vibhuti. I am final year medical student. I am from Nepal. I have 700 hours of active experience, and I participate in a lot of volunteering activities involving mental health in my country, Nepal. I'm also an ambassador of Safe in Our World. It's a gaming NGO which protects and talks about mental health importance in gaming community. It's very nice to be here and share this space with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Bubhuti. Shreyas?
Sure. Thanks, Isaac. Hi, everyone. Shreyas, I'm from India. I am currently not working. Currently not employed. On the hunt for jobs. Like many of us in the civil society space are. Um, and I have professionally trained in psychology, and I also have a post graduation in development management. And something about me is that I I like to read, write, listen to music, and I always have something. I always want to try something new.
Thank you, both of you. So as I go through each of our panelists' questions, I'll also be sharing in the chat just for accessibility so that um, you all are able to read the question. And if there's any clarification needed, please feel free to ask as well. I also try to regularly monitor the chat while this panel is going on in case there's any additional questions. But for our first question, Babuti, if you can start us off, is just that you have been deeply involved in peer support and lived experience advocacy, as you mentioned, throughout your career. Can you speak a bit on what role youth and peer-led mental health movements can play in building more resilient and sustainable communities?
Thank you so much for the question. I think as young people today, we are just not satisfied with participating in conversations of climate and mental health, right? We want to reimagine how the conversation is being taken place. We want to reimagine the foundation of how these issues are being approached. We want to ground our speaking our activism in radical equity, collective power, and including the lived experience. When we talk about like building resilient communities, sustainable communities, I think we must center the most impacted one, and the youth with lived experience are at forefront of this work. I think peer-led moments allow us to transform our private pain, our own story, our journey into the collective strength. By sharing our own stories, we destigmatize the topic of mental health struggles, the climate injustice we are facing. But also, with that, we create a space of trust, safety, and cultural relevance. I think if I'm talking about this topic, I will be doing an injustice if I don't talk about ground reality of my own country. So I want to base this talk based off on my country, Nepal. In Nepal, less than 1% of the national health budget goes into mental health. There's no support system that's being provided by the government. That's very reliable. There is, but it's not very reliable. But how does our community still continue to function? How do we support each other? It works because peer led movement and community based support models fill the gap left by the formal systems, right? For example, last November, there was a huge flood which devastated the eastern part of our country. And the first aid, it was not government who showed up, it was the people from the same community who were destabilized, who were mobilized for their own people. Those were the people who took stands for themselves, for others who were struggling in their community. And the teams, the first aid teams, psychological first aid teams that were being mobilized were also the youth led teams, some from NGOs, some they just went from their own good, some were just Facebook communities wanting to contribute, the youths who wanted to be there for their people and make sure people were being provided with good food, good water. They were there to support them, to show their care, right? Even this monsoon, this is rainy season, there are lots of floods and landslide going on. And these road road blockades and displaced family, it's young people who show up first to support their own neighbors, their own communities. And I don't think it's just that they show up their hand for the people who are stranded on the roads due to the landslide. They go up to them and say, hey, are you hungry? Are you stranded here? Do you need food? Do you need water? I think that support is being provided to them by the community who are affected. And these responses, I don't think they are just emergency work, right? They are emotional infrastructures. They are a form of resilience being built. Peer support usually starts small, like a trinket. But I think if it's recognized, nurtured, and resourced, it can thrive. These youth aren't just responding, they are organizing, they are counseling each other, they are the cultural translators saying, hey, this is our community, this is what's going on here, and they are the architect of their own community. They know what they need because they live there. And when young people come together, form these mutual circles, build spaces for each other, I don't think it's just for the others. It provides and builds spaces for each other to like talk about and process their eco anxiety or post disaster trauma. And something powerful happens. I think we see our own capacity. We start seeing that we are not alone. A lot of us are in the same situation. We are not alone in this fear. And then we find purpose in protecting ourselves, each other, and the land. And I think that's the heart of emotion, ecosystemic resilience. think climate change is just a physical threat. It leads to like food insecurities, disruption in education, loss of livelihood. All of these things causes cascading effects on our mental health, right? These all affect our mental health. These are hidden cost added. These are lost labors. These are family being displaced. These are like interrupted futures of people because they have to rebuild the future that they were already living. That's why I think peer-led movements must be supported. And it should not be just as a public investment, but as essential piece of the system. So to answer this question directly, I think youth and peer-led mental health are not just supplementary to building resilience, they are foundational to it. They turn fear into connection and crisis into community. Passing the mic back to you, Isaac.
Wow. I think that you said so much, Babuti, and so many powerful things. I loved your comment that youth peer support can sometimes manifest as something as small as a trinket, and that just I thought was a really fun way to describe it. A lot of what you described remind me of how young people reacted to a lot of the widespread fires that happened in Los Angeles a few months ago, and how many families lost their homes. And for those of you who are not familiar with Southern California, fires are a very common thing. Um, and that particular fire was extremely devastating to the LA community, and how very quickly I witnessed a lot of online youth activism and a lot of mutual aid programs being quickly developed to support families, or some young people in their own like digital communities kind of seeking financial support to recuperate following the loss of their homes and such. And so that model you were describing, Bhuti, of kind of community aid really resonated with me in my own communities as experiences. Shreyas, did you want to add on anything to this question before I move on?
No, I just wanted to back Isaac and Vibhuti both that um, community aid has always been very, very beneficial for me. Not not so much personally when it comes to climate, but uh, be it my queer community, be it my disability community, they have come to help me out all the time. And this is why spaces like the Global Mental Health Peer Network are important, because they they visualize us, um, and which is why we are here. We all are here. Uh, Vibhuti, I just wanted to say that after listening to you, it just makes me feel that I Nepal is just about a 2-hour flight from Delhi, and I need to visit Nepal very, very soon. So thank you for that. This is all I wanted to add.
Yeah, no, thank you, Shreyas. I think your comment is a great segue to our next question, which is just you spoke on how both queer and disabled communities have been able to kind of be a source of support for you. And that's definitely been the case for me as well. How can we ensure that climate and mental health policies are inclusive of queer and disabled voices in general?
Yeah. So when we when we talk about climate, um, people are differently affected by people are differently affected by climate change. And um, uh, what happens, if I give some local context in India, is that in India, when a disaster occurs, when a disaster occurs because of climate change or any other disaster, what we see is that especially persons with locomotor disabilities, the bathrooms are not accessible. The Of course, no gender, hardly any gender neutral restrooms, and of course here we also see the community coming for each other. But this what is also what I've also seen is that there is a deprioritization of mental health, especially in rural India. So the rural and the urban divide, of course, exists globally, but in my country, it's very out there. So um, when I visited Rajasthan, um, which is a which is a state in Western India, and I visited a primary healthcare center. It was the only person present in the primary healthcare center for thousands of people was uh, was a gynecologist and a pediatrician. No presence of a psychiatrist, definitely no presence of a psychologist. And not only this, the presence of India has an implementation. India has policies of running state mental health programs, district mental health programs. But despite this, I think similar to what Vibhuti said, the the mental health budget in India, out of the annual budget, what is allocated to mental health is just 1.3%. So um, when so what happens with this is that the gravity of the situation becomes very bad. Uh, we see people we see people of a certain we see businesses setting up and not and contributing to disastrous ways of uh, contributing to Earth not being in a very good state. And what happens with that is that communities are affected. So farmers are not able to grow crops. Uh, bamboo artists in villages are not able to grow bamboo, which is a traditional art form, I think, in the global south. And one thing that stuck with me when I was researching about this, the civil society is making an effort, but the civil societies the civil society is also being funded largely by people who are not very much into who do not understand community problems very well. And if we see the the, the policies that the climate programs that have been implemented, the monitoring and evaluation indicators are completely off the they do not talk how the community how about the impact that the community will have because of any climate change related program. If a monitoring and evaluation indicator is talking about a reduction in deforestation, that is important. But is it talking about reduction in stress of people? Is it talking about increase in income? Is it talking about um, things which center people? I think there is a lot of things which are not being done, and things which are being done, they have not been understood properly by the people who are holding power.
Yeah, thank you, Shreya, so much for your response. Some of the things that kind of immediately came to my mind as you were talking, especially about like the way we're measuring and thinking about program development and implementation and just policies was um, kind of some of the unseen or unspoken facts, especially for um, queer or communities with disabilities, particularly in the US. We see a lot of correlations where, for particularly young people, a lot of queer young people at times can also become homeless due to lack of supportive families, etc. And same thing for a lot of people who are experiencing houselessness across the United States. I don't remember the exact statistic, but a majority of people who are experiencing houselessness are also typically experiencing some form of mental health challenge or serious mental health challenges and are frankly failed by our healthcare system and not reached out to. enough. And the reason I focus and emphasize houselessness so much is that there is this constant question of, when there is intense weather and such, many of us who are privileged and have housing don't necessarily have to worry about that. Or if we have communities that we can rely on to um, flee a potential climate crisis, for example, when the LA fires happened, there were posts from very rich, like LA influencers who they said, "Oh, I just left and went to like my second home," which I don't think anyone here probably owns a second or even a first home. So I think that a lot of the times when we think of these policy conversations, especially when we consider queer and disabled communities, I also consider the topic around houselessness and how we oftentimes forget the role housing could play within that as well. That's a kid in my mind. But Babuti, did you have anything else to add or any additional thoughts related to this question?
I think all of the things have been said. I can add my own experience. I have chronic migraines. So, like, my migraines flare up at the in intense heat or in the summers, right? And like, I don't feel like there's any resources that I can reach out to and like talk about, like, yeah, my migraines are being flared up by the climate stress. The increasing temperature every year is causing me anxiety because I know, like, every passing year I am going to have to sit through a more brutal episode of migraine because the heat waves are like causing stresses, right? And also adding to what Isaac said, I think I can relate to that. We don't have like the forest fire here, but like the heat waves kills many people like every year, like 2 3 people, because of the people die, they don't have home where they can seek shelter for. Like, who is looking after them, who is looking after the disadvantageous community, right? And I think I second a lot of what Shreya said, and I found it interesting about the monitoring and evaluation as well. Here also in rural communities, like there are no like very good psychiatric services possible. It's only available in like district hospital, and there are also like quota are going on filled because like there aren't enough doctors who want to go there, or there aren't even enough being done by the government, saying like, yeah, let's take these resources to the rural communities. Let's make the vacancies in the health post in the rural places where these people are being needed, and the programs that are being conducted, it can like come off as one of thing, right? One mental health awareness program is not gonna make that community more sustainable. You need more check-ins, you need more support, you need a system built in that place where you can fall back on every day, every time of the year, not just one day of the year where you go say like, yeah, it's mental health awareness program, talk about mental health and talk about what's depression and just end the topic there, right? Yeah, I think that's all I have to add to this. I think mental health policies should be inclusive of everything and like take the data from the people in consideration while making the policies. Like the disparity being shown can cause a lot of problems, and if the proper researches are not being done, then how can we like expect the policies to include everyone's voices, to include the voices of the queer communities, to include the voices of the disabled people, right?
Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you so much.
I just wanted to
Um,
add one thing to that. Uh, I think uh, uh, something that uh, forest fire, of course, you did talk about forest fires, but something that is very, very rampant or is quite visible in India, especially visible in Delhi, rather, which is the capital where I am staying, are floods uh, caused by incessant rain because of the flooding system and the drainage system on the roads. What happens because of that is um, there is the water level keeps rising on the road, and about 10 minutes from where I live are multiple libraries on the basement, multiple basement libraries for preparation of examinations. And what happened last year three students, three three students studying for government exams passed away because the water entered the library and they could not actually, and that messed up the locking system of the same, and they could not exit from the library. And this this was very, very, what this also exposed was was the justice system of India, because till date no arrests have been made, and who were those who were arrested, they were bailed out um, in a few weeks. So and I think one narrative that I forgot to bring, which I had uh, uh, which I was thinking when I think Vibhuti was talking about persons with sensory disabilities. What happens with them is that they also depend a lot on mobile phones, and and uh, and internet. What happens, and this of course affects the internet access. And uh, when when the internet is affected, they they have trouble in calling a cab, they have trouble in ordering food, they have trouble in communicating on WhatsApp, in using their phone. And this is this becomes a problem. And some narratives that have also been recorded of the particularly about the transgender community is that um, we have also seen uh, people, trans people actually losing documentation uh, during floods. And it is significantly, I'm not sure what is the state in the US, but it's a nightmare to get a transgender identity card in here in India. And when a person loses documentation, they lose. It is very, very difficult to get them back. That's another thing I wanted to point out.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing, Shreyas. I think that you bring up such a great point around phone usage and how I feel like especially in the US, we take for granted that we have data and those sorts of things, but even how like services like Lyft or Uber can be essential for people who may be not as physically able to transport themselves due to their disabilities, and also just around quite literally the physical loss of documentation. Those are great points that I feel like are not considered too often. Um, I have one last question for our panelists, and then we'll move into Q&A. And again, I'll put it in the chat, but Ubuntu, as you mentioned, you have over 600 plus hours of active listening experience. It's a lot of listening. um, what are young people and the young people that you're talking to, what are they saying about their own mental health within the context of climate anxiety and environmental uncertainty?
I think I can say one thing with certainty is that young people are experiencing a lot of uncertainties right now, right? Like just recently, what happened with Parth, I think, okay, let me read out the message he had sent. He said that the fact that so many calls about climate change and mental health happen online, and folks from global south countries that reside in areas with low resources often can't participate due to factors out of their own control. I think he makes a great point here, which can bring out a lot of topic about identity, intersectionality, and how in global south a simple thing as the rain and high rain can cause the shortage of electricity and cause the situations like these where us youths who are transitioning more towards the remote work settings from the working in offices directly, right, are impacted by it. And I think we have a lot to say. I think we are not just navigating the climate anxiety. The youths today are facing the climate fatigue, the climate grief, and there is a constant state of uncertainty, right? It's just It's not just the floods washing away the homes of the people, it's disrupting the intergenerational spaces they were in, the places where they grew up in, and their safety net has been like being broken. Like the future just feels blurry because of all these climate issues. I feel like we are fighting for a year also, literally and emotionally, right? And I think it's heartbreaking that our system often aren't equipped to hold this kind of grief, especially in global south where mental health infrastructure is limited. And I think young people, they have like learned to internalize this pain quietly. I don't think we talk about it often. We are learning to be resilient alone. We are trying to talk about this thing with ourselves, to stay silent because there are more problems in the world, except feeling bad about like planet not being the way it should be, right? I think that's another thing why the lived experience and the peer support can be very useful. And I think another thing I want to add is like the guilt we feel, because the helplessness, the guilt because we care about the planet but we can't always show up to fight about it, right? The guilt that often comes from the system that place individual responsibility over collective accountability. We are being held responsible for what is happening, but where's the collective accountability? Where's the systemic factors that matters are being changed? I feel like that should make an impact, right? I think we are tired of being just seen as victims or volunteers. We want to co-create solutions, and I think a lot of the solution, climate-based solution, are being taken out by youths in today's world. But are they getting the funding to make their solution to reality? It's not just about being told to be hopeful. We want to make a change, and for that we need a process in place, like, right, to make the space, to have the opportunity to make the changes we want to make. We want a safe space to process our emotions. We want support system that does not require a label or clinical severity to assess care. We need more local accessible, the decolonized mental health models, like uh, here in Nepal, in Himalayan region, due to climate change, like the snows are melting, right? And people there are very anxious about what's gonna happen for future, because they depend upon the water that's being brought up by those snows, right? If they are losing their water, their source of livelihood, uh, on the top of the Himalayas, who is looking after them? Who is hearing their concerns? Who is like thinking about the anxiety they are facing? Um, that's, I think, very personal. And I think it has been, I think Shreyas also talked about it earlier, the farmers and their crops who are thinking about it. Like even this year, we are experiencing monsoon a little later than expected in Nepal, which causes a season of drought, and it impacted the crop growing, the growing of rices in the western part of Nepal severely. Like they are worried about their future. I think that's all. Yeah, I think it reminds us that we can't build resilient communities without emotionally resilient people. And that does not mean suppression, that means connection, that means our voice being heard and the actions being taken in the policy level, as we talked earlier, and by the people. Thank you so much. I think that's all I have to say.
That was some. Thank you, Babuti, for all of your wisdom and for everything you shared. I definitely resonated with this sentiment around accountability and pressure being placed on younger generations, and oftentimes we're not really acknowledging the roles that often adults and decision makers have in a lot of these climate conversations, and how a lot of the decisions being made are made with the fact that they won't even be alive long enough to see the consequences of the actions that are being made. So I really resonated with that, especially in the US context where it does often feel like young people are kind of pushed as this, like, they'll innovate and they'll figure it out and they'll be the solution, but that's never guaranteed, and this kind of unconsensual pressure that's been placed on younger generations to be the solution. Um, yeah, Shreyas, do you have any additional thoughts before I open it to the group for Q&A?
I think Vibhuti said it all. And I what I loved about what was powerful in her speech was the fact that she talks about her exhaustion in just listening and not being able to do anything about it, which is um, which I think is very, very powerful. And um, we as the youth um, are are making efforts, but our voice needs to be at the our voice also needs to take center stage.
Yeah, thank you, Shreyas. Um, that was all the time that we had for questions for the panelists from our end, but I wanted to open up to the audience to see if you all had any questions you'd like to ask our group. You all are welcome to unmute and ask your question verbally, or you're also welcome to use the Zoom chat function, and I can read your question out loud if that's a preference. But yeah, does the group have any questions for our panelists?
Maybe I can just start off as a question. This is just open to you all. So from your perspective, what's the single most effective way to get decision makers to take youth voices seriously?
One mechanism in the US sorry, I'll actually go first. One thing that I've been closely following and I've been really interested in is there is a group of youth activists that are trying to sue the US Congress and the US government, and they're suing them basically for an infringement on their own human rights by failing to protect the environment. So I think that this is a really, and I'm not somebody that comes from a super deep policy or political science background, but I think it's a very unique and alternative mechanism that we're seeing where young people are fed up with just being told to advocate and like use their voice. Because I mean, at times, and I feel like this has been a conversation for years, using our voice only goes so far, and sometimes, especially for decision makers, legal consequences need to be put in front of them for them to kind of finally understand the true toll and pressure of it. So that one I feel like has been a really unique and I think innovative way that more potential, depending on the legal systems within their nation. But I think that's a potentially innovative way that we could also consider and navigate climate advocacy. But yeah, Shreyas or Babhuti, do you have any additional thoughts?
I absolutely agree to what you said. I think another thing that could be very helpful in my eyes is like a lot of researchers, more decentralized researchers, because it will not be just voices anymore. You will have a document that says, "Hey, this is what youths are saying. This is what's causing us stress," and they will be forced to hear us if there are like the more documents, the more researches, the more data that they can't ignore, like while making policies and like talking about it in higher levels, right? I think that's all I have to say.
Just adding to what Isaac and Vibhuti said, I feel that a lot of the when I communicated personal narratives in my when I was talking, it was what was made clear from that is that people people who are affected by climate change, they have not adequately been heard to. So the solution the solutioning is happening both at the prevention stage and in the cure stage. The prevention stage, in the prevention stage, we see programs being focused on carbon emissions, on solar energy, and and uh, and in the cure, and in cure we are seeing uh, we are seeing solutioning being implemented in equitable pricing to farmers. But what is still happening is that um, these realities are continuing, and um, the emissions, the impact of climate change is only increasing. So I believe that one just needs to question ourselves. One needs to keep writing. One needs to keep reflecting on who gets to say, and who gets to decide. And one also needs to be our government also needs to be accountable. The government who we are voting for needs to be accountable for the damage that has already been done, because some damage actually is sometimes it's irreparable, and even the compensation that is being that is offered is it hardly scratches the surface. So a lot to unpack here.
Thank you both for sharing, and thank you, Zach, for your question. Do any of our other audience members also have any questions or comments? Oh, thank you, Vanessa, in the chat. Vanessa says, thank you for inspiring interventions and reflections. Thank you, too, for bringing up these topics of climate grief, fatigue, anxiety, guilt, and accountability from the youth perspective. Thank you, Vanessa, for your comment. Yeah. Are there any additional questions or comments or reflections from our audience members?
I do have a question. Hi. So basically, I'm asking, like, how we can amplify the voices of youth, like, for the um to work for like climate resilience. Also, like, how we can develop a community that work for these like uh climate change more effectively. So yeah, that's.
Yeah, thank you so much for your question.
Sorry, Deep, can you please repeat your question?
Yeah, sure. So I was saying, like how we can make a more youth-based communities or amplify the voices of like youth for become more climate resilience and working for the climate change.
Yeah,
Bhuti, would
Shreyansh
you
and
like?
Babutsi. Oh, sorry, as if either of you want to start us off.
Okay. Okay. So I will start. Uh, so um, when we when we talk about centering research, there is a lot happening. There is a lot happening uh, in countries. Um, I think participatory research is something that uh, that that uh, that could be one thing that could be explored. That could be explored. So we have a local organization in India which is called Participatory Research. Um, Participatory Research in India, and uh, um, and that could be the starting point of involving the youth. um, what we are also seeing is the youth is directly diving into rivers, taking out garbage, even though this is not their um, um, even though traditionally it does not seem their responsibility, but the youth is doing it. And um, what I am taking forward from here is that the youth cares about the generation um, that is going to follow after us, and uh, um, I'm happy about that. What about you, Vibhuti?
I think Shreyas has talked about a lot of it. One thing I feel like is I don't think there's one approach or two approach, right? There should be multi-sectoral approach about it. Like we should be doing the local capacity building of the youth, training them, and professional to provide community-based cares where the specialists are scarce. Like in Nepal, there are like female health volunteers who are being provided these things, who talk to the community about it, who are like the spokesperson to the community of that place. Like training them could make a lot of difference. And I think addressing the elephant in the room, it should be policy integration, because the policies should embed the psychological resilience we are talking about, right, in every field. No matter what, in health, in education, in environmental policies, on mobilizing youth, on planning the cities. And I think we as youths are very social media driven right now, and leveraging the existing spaces we have, like social medias or schools or like the clubs we are forming, to have the real conversations on the topic about mental health and like climate grief can go a long way. And I think stable financing and funding to the youth-led solutions could like create a long-lasting changes. Like it should be a long-term funding, not just during crises, or like just at the incubatory fund, right? You need it for the whole time. And adding to the point what stress brought about, like being there for the next generation after us, like we equip young people with the knowledge of emotional literacy and the skills needed to face like the climate disruption with more compassion, with more courage. And for that we need a lot of like we can make the courses for the resilience building, for the emotional literacy, which could like directly help the next generation coming after us. Yeah, I think that's all I have.
Thank you both for sharing. I feel like you all covered everything I would have said, and I want to be conscious of time. I see Filani, you have your hand raised, and you'll be our last question for today.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for the presentation so far. Well, it's about to end, so thank you for the presentation. I just wanted to ask that, do you think that the youth are learning about climate change at a good age, or can we actually do better? What can we do to teach the youth about climate change and its effects on the communities?
Yeah, I'm happy to start us off. For the past few months, I've been supporting the development of a peer-based intervention for youth experiencing climate anxiety out of Stanford. And the reason I bring that up is that we had the same conversation, and our youngest advisor is, I believe, 14 or 13 years old. And that's pretty young for an advisory role in just an advisory capacity. But I think that even as we discussed in our group, kind of at what age do young people really become very conscious of the climate crisis? And some of the youth advisors on that panel or on that board were discussing how they've been very anxious about climate change since they were as young as like 6, 7, or 8. So I think that oftentimes, and I feel like even I sometimes fall into this trap with my younger nieces, who the younger one is 12. Um, they are very aware and know a lot more and are scared of a lot more than we give them credit for. I think that they're also able to understand and develop a relationship with nature at such a very young age. Like I feel like I know with my nieces on a very more interpersonal level have always been really appreciative and passionate about outdoor spaces and access to outdoor spaces, and that's always been a source of joy for them. And I mean, we know the importance of the sun and the outdoors for youth development, but I think that it's great to also consider educating young people at a very young age, not just about, the climate crisis and how it's all scary, but I think on a broader level, also educating on having a good relationship with the environment and just understanding at a young age why is it important. Um, why is it important to have access to these spaces and helping young people make their own meaning of their space and their environment. But yeah, Bubhuti and Shreyas, do you have any additional last minute thoughts?
I think you have covered almost all that I would have said. One thing I can add on this is like being more based on age-based learning, right? Like different ages learn on different ways and like on different emotional or mental level, and being like incorporating it based on their age, and and I think we can like start making them more emotionally more resilient from like young age, and we can like keep adding aspects to it, keep adding layers to it, and like using the methods that they can understand based on their age from young age, I think. And I think I love the point you made that it's not just about the crises and the negative impacts, it's more about building the good relationship with the environment, with nature. I think that's all I have to add to that.
Great. Shreyas, do you have anything else to add?
No, I think you both have covered everything. One thing that I think the person who asked the question, they said they use a specific word, unlearn, and uh, I remember, I think in childhood, when during my childhood, I some when when my parents asked me to take the bus, I always used to think that taking the bus is just a way to, it's just a cheaper way of transportation. But um but the fact is also that it is also a method of reducing carbon emissions. It's also a method of protecting the depletion of resources. And when I have grown slightly older, I have understood that I've understood that every day matters, every effect, and everything matters. Things are so well connected. Uh, I mean, things are actually quite interconnected rather. We have seen how climate is related to mental health. Mental health is related to uh, um, mental health is related to migration. Migration, how? So basically, there's a lot, a causal loop of things converging together. And if we from childhood itself, from primary education itself um needs to talk about why, what climate change is, what the repercussions of or what the repercussions of climate change are. And because it's easy to learn rather than unlearn.
Thank you so much. Well, I see that we are very close to time, so I just wanted to thank Shreyas and Bubhuti both for your powerful perspectives and your lived experiences and for participating in this panel. If I remember, this is both of y'all's first ever panel. I wouldn't know that, so I think you all did great. And thank you so much just for taking the time, everyone, to participate and listen to this conversation. Um, of course, this is just the beginning of a series of conversations hopefully you all have in your own spaces around youth mental health and climate change. But thank you all again, and thank you to the Peer Network for organizing this event. I hope you all have a wonderful weekend.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you,
Bye-bye.
everyone.
Thank you.
Bye
Bye-bye.
bye.